Hello, my astrology friends. This is Lada from AstroLada.com, and this is the 2023 Astrology Marathon with top astrologers from around the world. And my most important partner and teacher as well, Viktor, is here to lead us through the most important points of 2023. He has prepared extensively, and I'm very excited what he has to share with us about the year 2023. Hello, Viktor.
Hi, Lada. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. 2023 is a big ride, so definitely we have got loads to cover. First of all, if we believe that 2020 was big, then we might need to start shifting our mentality because 2023 might be a lot bigger. Or at least things are going to be unfolding and, life is going to start moving forward. But when there are so many energies moving forward, typically it's difficult at the beginning because we humans have got trouble of adjusting immediately. Now, it really depends on whether someone has got so many mutable energies in their chart, they might adapt quicker. But if someone has got plenty of fixed energies, they might get stuck a little bit, and these planetary changes will kick butts. So therefore, I thought I will give you a little bit of an overlook of, what these changes are, what they might be talking about, especially on a world scale. Because if I broke it down, we would be sitting here for 15 hours. So that might not be working. I've already done an intense kind of marathon of my own, and I think at least it's 15-hour material, so impossible to cover all of those in one video. But basically what is happening in 2023, we have got loads of sign changes going on. So first of all, we already experienced at the end of the year that Venus star point is changing, which is a big one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Saturn is going to be changing sign in March, and it's going to move into the sign of Pisces. Pluto is changing sign, and it's going to move into the sign of Aquarius. For me, one of the biggest one is Sedna moving into the sign of Gemini, which probably not many people will talk about, but I want to talk about that because that sign change is affecting us for 40 years.
40?
So it's 40, 30 odd years. So Sedna is a very slow-moving energy. Since 1960s, it's been in the sign of Taurus. And next year, in the middle of the summer, it's going to go into the sign of Gemini. So that's going to be a huge change for us as well. And not to mention that we're going to have Jupiter moving into the sign of Taurus. And Jupiter and Uranus will start its new 14-year cycle as well, because they're going to be having a conjunction. And on top of that, the nodes will be changing sign too, and they're going to be shifting into Aries and Libra. So therefore, we have got 5-6 bigger sign changes, and therefore this is going to be a huge year.
Absolutely. Just before
maybe one of the most.
Before you start, I want to tell everyone that Viktor is an incredible teacher, and he's offering all his courses at a great discount with this video for all AstroLada viewers. I'll put a link below to all his courses if you're interested. I'm constantly learning from Viktor. He's constantly upgrading his game. So if you'd like to learn with him, or if you'd like a personal reading for him, but he's booked the whole, like you can receive your personal reading in 2023. It's not going to be 2022 because he's booked throughout till the end. So carry on.
Yes. One of the biggest changes in 2023, in my opinion, is going to be Saturn, obviously moving into the sign of Pisces. Hopefully, obviously, we struggled a little bit while Saturn was in the sign of Aquarius because it wanted to restructure bits and bobs around humanitarian matters, how we approach humans, how we approach the society itself, what the rules are, how to break away from the rules. Shall I keep them? Shall I, run with the rules and so forth? And now Saturn is moving into the sign of Pisces. And if we look at the keywords for Pisces, it really talks about depth. Pisces represents the bottom of the ocean. So a bottom of the ocean is basically invisible, unseen, and it's fluid. So Saturn wants to kind of contain something there. It wants to kind of dig deep and go down and then see what is happening at the bottom of the ocean. So if we talk about on a human level, this would really talk about the importance of introspection and discovering the spiritual self as well, rather than blaming. Because unfortunately, Pisces has got a tendency to blame others. It is called kind of like in psychology, the drama triangle, where, you know, sometimes I'm the prosecutor, sometimes I'm the victim. And, you know, we kind of, it's a catch-22, and we need to learn to break out of that. And Saturn will want to do that, you know, rather than blaming the world, what can I start with our life? Because we need to remember that Saturn is someone who wants to build, right? So it starts from the scratch and then it builds and builds. That's why Saturn was such things like construction work, for instance, because we need a strong foundation. And those people who don't have a strong foundation, don't have a strong self-esteem, if you like it, then Saturn can be a little bit of a challenge. So what I usually say in regards to Saturn, never look at Saturn in the sign where it is. Meaning that when Saturn is actually transiting the sign of Aquarius, focus on Saturn in the sign of Pisces, because Saturn is the planet of preparation. So I'll give you an idea here. When Saturn went into my 12th house, I said to myself, okay, it's time to actually work on my body, because I knew that Saturn was going to move into the first house. And I was afraid if I didn't make the necessary preparation while it was in the 12th house, it's going to kick my butt very strongly when it goes into the sign of Pisces. And yes, Saturn in the first house can bring, for instance, illnesses and sicknesses and limitations to the body and so forth. So the preparation always needs to be done in the previous house and in the previous sign. Wow. So for instance, if Saturn is going to move into your second house, start working on your finances already while Saturn is in the first, because then Saturn brings you reward. That's the biggest key success factor with Saturn.
Wow, I love this. I love it. I'll keep it forever.
And it works brilliantly, you know. I mean, I've been doing that for a while, and for me, it pretty much works. If we prepare for Saturn, it should bring goodies. You can also do that with your personal planets as well.
Hard work before that, and then when Saturn enters that house, you get the rewards and you consolidate. Like you've done amazing, like how you look, you've lost weight, and well, Saturn was in your 12th house, and now when it enters your first house, you're just gonna solidify this in your life and avoid the painful sides if you might have gotten sick or whatever. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to remember that the houses are built on each other. So this is another mistake I usually see with astrology students, that they focus, let's say, on the 9th house. However, we should remember that the 9th house, we have got a 10th house to follow. So what it means is that I learn something so that I can be successful with my career, for instance. This could be one way to look at it. But the other thing we need to look at is that the previous house is the 8th house. So the planets actually rising in the rising sign, and then they go towards the midheaven, right? But when we look at astrology, we see it in a different way, because that's our perspective from the Earth. So if I'm working with the 9th house, we need to look at both the 8th and the 10th. And the 8th house is something to do with gathering our power. So when we have got a transit in the 9th house, I learn to gather my power so that when we get to the 8th house in reverse transits, for instance, then I'm already powerful enough to get out of my comfort zone, or, you know, get out of crisis situations, whatever the 8th house represents, because I've got already the knowledge for it. Mm-hmm. So, and then when we do this, so why I wanted to talk about that a little bit is because Saturn in that sense is similar. So if we build previously, then the reward is coming afterwards. Mm-hmm. So, and this is not a period of time while Saturn is in the sign of Pisces when we need to be indecisive. Saturn is not going to be happy about that. The more you know, the more you realize that your knowledge is not enough. So it keeps wanting to build on the foundation. It wants us to kind of build on facts and data. Now, let me just teach something there as well, because I think, maybe it's worth for everyone. Let's say we're talking about the sign of Pisces and people look at two planetary rulers. They look at the Jupiter and Neptune, whether we are modern or a traditional astrologer. What I do is I look at the detrimental ruler as well. I look at the exalted ruler of the sign. So the detrimental ruler of Pisces is Mercury. So the detrimental ruler actually indicates how you can fall. So therefore, I'm going to give you an example. Saturn goes into the sign of Pisces, and Saturn wants to crystallize there something tangible. Now, how we can fall is if we don't gather enough information and knowledge about something, because the detrimental ruler is Pisces. And then what happens is when we look at the exalted ruler, which is going to be Venus, the exaltation always brings major ups and major downs. It's classified as a goodie, but it can bring so much that the person becomes overwhelmed with that. So for instance, let's imagine that Venus in the sign of Pisces wants to be falling in love with everyone. Saturn is not going to like that. Saturn says, hold on a minute, choose one, be wise about it, be smart, and then after I can give you something. So look at all those, and then that's going to give you a bigger picture of how to prepare for that Saturn. And of course, when we look at that exalted ruler of Pisces combined with Saturn, imagine that Saturn and Venus are conjuncting, basically in the sign of Pisces. And it's really going to talk about self-worth. I'm not good enough. I talk down on myself. And Saturn is not going to like that. So you're going to have to start building on your confidence level, if you like it. Saturn in the sign of Pisces could really talk about lack of confidence, why you are silent, because it's a water sign and the water signs are silent. And if we kind of live through the lower manifestation of Pisces, again, it's very kind of easy to approach Pisces, because what happens is that we have got two fishes swimming in the opposite directions. So somehow it reflects duality. Now, one fish is going towards Aquarius, the other one is going towards Aries. So one is pulling us towards the future, the other one is going towards the past, in a sense. And of course, Pisces talks about endings. So Saturn is the planet of death. So we want something to die here. We want something to kind of leave us forever, and then preparing ourselves for something extremely big and new. And that new is going to be a big new in 2026, because we're going to have Saturn and Neptune conjunction happening on 0 degree of Aries, which is the world axis. So the next 3 years for me is pretty much a preparation for a big shift. And obviously we have got 6 planetary energies changing sign. These are just preparing us. The action is really going to start in 2026, but we're going to see the signs already. Or Pisces can represent fake things. So Saturn says, hold on, I don't want any more fake stuff. So either I want the kind of like the entire truth, and I'm going to kind of pour it in someone's faces, or I don't want anything out of it. Or it can become a little bit like overly trusting or completely impressionable. Or it's very easy to get drawn into shady businesses, scams, and all these type of things. So Saturn says, be cautious about that. However, the highest manifestation of Pisces would be that you have got this spiritual and mystical awakening. And you become more empathetic towards yourself, towards your needs as well as others. So this could really talk about how much the personal therapy is going to grow, for instance, in the next 3 years. But I'm going to give some hints and tips about businesses which might be struggling in the next couple of years, and businesses which might be thriving as well. But also how you're going to make yourself feel special, how are you going to give and get something. So it's not just about giving my energy to others, but I'm going to receive something back as well at the same time. This shift is huge. And I would recommend the viewers to go back to April and May 2021, 22, and having a look at what was going on in your life. Why is that? Because Jupiter and Neptune had a conjunction on 23, 24 degree of Pisces. So, of course, Saturn is moving into the sign of Pisces. Once it's going to reach that conjunction point anyway, in a couple of years' time, but you're going to start seeing that something you were dreaming about, April, May time, then Saturn wants to crystallize that, giving shape and form. Saturn is the exalted ruler of Libra. So Libra talks about shapes and forms and negotiations and all those type of things. So it's something giving a shape and form to your long-term goals, for instance. If you are kind of yearning for an ideal world and you have got these dreams, but you don't take action about it, you don't feel this inspired or you cannot really merge your dreams with a higher power or with physical actions, unfortunately, this Saturn is definitely going to kick butts. So we need the spirituality, but we need reality as well at the same time. Also, the lesson of Pisces is that, things are a lot bigger than one individual. And remembering that what you see is not always the truth. So, of course, it brings in the social media element. Now, the detrimental ruler of Pisces is Mercury, so it's the misinformation, and Saturn wants to organize that. Which one do I believe? Which one don't I believe? How can I get my head around, And also, this is really talking about that whatever happens in the world has an impact on the individual as well. So we cannot shut our eye on certain things, what is going on. So it kind of wants us to have a spiritual bond going on in the humankind. Why is the humankind? Because that one fish is swimming towards Aquarius. So if we don't have kind of collaborations going on, if you like it, then unfortunately, if we have got this narcissistic tendency, because Sun and Neptune really talks about narcissism in our chart, then unfortunately, we might go off the rail and we won't know anymore who to trust, what to trust. Most likely it's going to be testing whether we have got faith in ourselves as well. And then unfortunately, we can become the victim of the universal law overall. So, some bits and bobs, what to expect while, because when I prepare material for like big shifts, what I do is I go back and I check what was going on in the past. And I look at plenty of data and I want to see some correlations. So I did that with Saturn in Pisces as well. And we had the spread of Renaissance, which was one significant. Most likely we should see some elevation when it comes to a new evolvement of, artsy things.
Art, music.
But also we had things going on as in health crisis situations, such as the Black Death. We also had labor movements going on. The socialist parties pretty much appeared, such as in England, France, and the US. We had the Bolshevik movement in Russia.
You mean during other periods of Saturn in Pisces, you've checked?
Yeah, okay. That's right. So it's not just in the previous one, but I looked at the common themes.
There's something about Bolshevism and communism and collectivism between Saturn, Neptune, or Saturn, Pisces connections always.
That's right. So my guess is that while Saturn is going to move into the sign of Pisces in the next 2.5 years, there is going to be religious movements going on. It's very interesting, by the way, this religious movement, because whenever Saturn is in the sign of Pisces, there is always crisis situation going on in Christianity. So somehow it reforms the religion. So Saturn in the sign of Pisces, for instance, it brought, unfortunately, Hitler in 1933 when he obtained power, and then he eradicated the churches. Then we had 1962 when Vatican II came around, and that was the reformed Vatican Council. And we had 1994 when the Church of England ordained their first female priest.
Oh, wow.
And all this time, it was a little bit of a witch hunting going on at the same time. So something is happening with religious beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of believe.
Absolutely.
The other topic which really came up to me was the video game industry. So what happened was that we started with the Mortal Kombat around the Saturn in Pisces type of thing. And all of a sudden, as soon as Saturn moved into the sign of Pisces, they said, you know what, we need to protect our children. We need to motivate our children to spend more time in the nature and all those type of things. And because what they said was that actually they had this fear of the young children being corrupted by media. So I'm expecting media regulations, and Neptune rules YouTube. So YouTube is going to be a target. Or I can imagine that someone is going to buy up, YouTube. We can see that nowadays as well, Twitter and all those type of stuff. So it wouldn't be a shock if something was going on with, YouTube as well.
Instagram, YouTube, anything that makes videos, images.
That's right. Maybe it's not restriction, but maybe,
regulation.
you cannot watch everything online on YouTube, or you're going to have to pay a certain amount of money, because this is going to be a way of children not watching. That's going to be the explanation behind it, of course, that children cannot watch, certain types of things. So these are, and also, very interesting, because I like looking at what type of films appearing each ingress chart. And we had Buffy the Vampire Slayer coming around, X-Files.
Oh,
how
mystery stuff.
mystical, right?
Yeah.
So I'm expecting something around the UFOs coming up. But I'm also expecting something like an increased accountability for the adult film industry.
Oh.
Most likely they're going to be raising the minimum age of social media advertisement. I think there is going to be efforts made about legalizing or restricting cannabis, because Neptune rules anything which is altering your mind. I think there is going to be death of very famous musicians, Pope or Prime Minister. I don't like talking about death, because the last time I made a video about possibly the Queen passing away, and then I got hot and cold for it. Unfortunately, 3 weeks later, she passed away. I thought it was going to be a rumor. And the reason why I had that feeling, because I looked at Mercury retrograde period. And Mercury retrograde repeats themes every 11 months. So what does that mean? When Mercury goes retrograde on a certain degree, 11 months later, it finishes the retrograde period exactly on the same degree. Or it finished somewhere, and then 11 months later, it starts the retrograde period there. So I looked at 11 months before what was going on, and the headline was full of news of the Queen has passed away. So I was like, I'm sure there is going to be rumors or a physical event around her, Yeah, Mercury is an interesting thing. But anyway, you can buy that course if you are interested how to work with Mercury retrogrades. So, but I can imagine that a prime minister or a pope or a famous musician will die. The prime minister or the pope is coming from Saturn, because that rules hierarchy figures. But surely we should be expecting some new waves of music, most likely the end of the current pop culture is coming up. So maybe we're going to stop seeing things like X Factor or Pop Idol or all those type of things, and something new comes in, and they're going to discover new talents, and a new music industry is kind of, you know, getting created, if you like it.
Yeah, restructure it, maybe make it, give access to more normal people of any, maybe because Saturn is very much about the normal people, everyday people as well. And
that's right.
Hopefully there will be more well, it doesn't give easily access, but we can restructure the music industry in some way.
Further themes which can come up, unfortunately, such as ice caps melting, and I even forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, but Humeya has just changed signs as well, and it went into the sign of Scorpio, and it's going to spend there quite loads of time too. And Humeya rules Hawaii. So, and it rules islands, especially, but Hawaii is a number one, what it rules. It could really talk about, for instance, some islands are just going to disappear because there is going to be some natural disaster. It could talk about that, for instance, the rising of the ocean or water shortages, for instance, or the water management is going to be changing. Actually, it could talk about the water prices will be going up as well, because Saturn rules anything to do with shortages. It could really talk about the mass migration being limited. And I'm actually expecting something like that. And one thing which I'm very certain about is identity matters. Now, Gemini rules genderification, and is that the word genders? And Sedna is moving in there. I'm going to talk about that separately. But also, Pisces, when we kind of feel lost and we don't know who the heck we are anymore. So Saturn wants us to figure out who we are. So it is connected to identity to a certain extent. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a confusing time how to call someone. It's a she or he or they or all those type of things. And actually, it can even talk about, let's see, but it would talk about that people are going to use less selfies. Restriction of the selfies. That's a possibility also.
Selfies, a Pisces.
I think this might be a very challenging period of time for those who were born between 1964 and 1967. The reason why, because they had a stellium going on at that time with major planets in the sign of Virgo. We had the Uranus-Pluto conjunction happening there, which is very much about freedom and security. So those people are quite affected, and I definitely recommend them preparing themselves for something. That's pretty much very briefly about Saturn. I think I can talk about that a lot more, but we should expect definitely some ideological political movements. I can actually imagine another health crisis coming up because Pisces talks about health. But definitely it could talk about the shortages of doctors and hospitals and hospital workers. Now, Pisces does not rule the workers, but the opposite sign does. And how Saturn works is that whatever it touches, it always makes shortages in that polarity. Jupiter makes too many things out of that sign wherever it goes into. So they are kind of the counter part of each other. Yes, so staying real, I think if we want to just mention a couple of, kind of remedies for Saturn in the sign of Pisces, that would really talking about not necessarily acting out, but having intentions It is about the integration of the material and the non-material values. It's about being honest to yourself. It's about cutting away conspiracy theories from your life, making sure that you deliver your promises. Be kind to people who are in need, because you don't know when you're going to need help and who is going to help you. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to have to put our ego aside and we just need to get things done. So some of the really, I think great advice when it comes to Saturn.
I love the conspiracy theories, Pisces. Saturn is like, cut out this.
Yeah.
It can be.
It's a challenging position. Saturn and Neptune are natural enemies. They are about completely different opposing principles. So therefore, Saturn in the sign of Pisces is a challenge. However, I'd like to point out that Saturn has got planetary joy in the 12th house, which is a Piscean house. What it really means is when we block out the conspiracy theories, the fears, the subconscious crap, what is going on in our head, then actually we're going to see the world in the shape we need to see. And life becomes a lot easier. The next one, which is worth talking about, I think it's Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. Again, what we need to remember is that Jupiter has already been in the sign of Aries. And I'm not going to talk about Jupiter in the sign of Aries too long, even though it's going to be there still till May. But we've done that last year. We spoke about that. So that could be, look back. But this shift is really about Aries, which is about initiating. Taurus is giving physical form to it. So if I started a business project, for instance, then the question is, how am I going to hold on to that? How am I going to maintain it, if you like it? Or I started something, how am I going to make money out of that? So these signs are kind of built on each other. But this is still in the first quadrant. So the first quadrant is really about self-protection. And still there is that egotistical side of things, really. Now, I think Jupiter in the sign of Taurus will want us to come to peace with ourselves. It wants us to be, it's a little bit like in a challenging position, because Jupiter wants to have fun and adventure. And Taurus says, oh no, I need money. I need stability. I need security. I need to stay in one place. And then what Jupiter does, it kind of starts collecting and accumulating things. So we can end up with a full fridge, for instance, and then the food is just kind of, going rotten in a sense, because no one is really, eating it.
Yeah.
So Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, on one hand, definitely talks about the need to be generous and the ability to share. Now, this sharing and receiving element has been an ongoing topic in the last 1 year, because we had all the eclipses happening in Taurus and Scorpio. Yes, we can say that, this is the financial world and, economic crises. And definitely Jupiter in the sign of Taurus will want us to not to waste, but to save as well a little bit, because Jupiter rules the wastage. And Taurus keeps everything. So sometimes what happens is that we have got, I don't know, 25 pairs of the same shoes. And I'm like, how did I end up having 25 pairs? I don't even remember getting them. So are you going to be that person, So that's one thing. The other one is that I think Jupiter in the sign of Taurus will talk about that people will want to watch their saving accounts a little bit more. It could really talk about that people will be, hopefully, I'm really hoping actually, that people will be focusing a little bit more on their personal values, such as you know, do I agree with this or do I not agree with this? Jupiter is kind of like the right or the wrong planet. It's about moral codes. So do I agree with, I don't know, you know, people spending so much money and so forth, or do I not agree with that? That could be something which might be coming up here quite a lot. But Jupiter is the planet of optimism. So we're going to have to learn to kind of be a little bit more optimistic about our financial opportunities as well. Meaning that, you know, if in Aries that Jupiter wanted us to get going and start something which we believe it would be great. So this time around, if you have got a great business idea, then go ahead with it and get it started, basically. That's what really it talks about. Also, this could talk about, because Taurus is something to do with building things. Mm-hmm. So what do you want to build in your life? Can you be optimistic about that? It could talk about, by the way, I did look at Jupiter back in the days as well, in the sign of, you know, Taurus. And unfortunately, what I experienced is that there was always money issues going on. So we don't need to be looking at, unfortunately, maybe we don't need to be looking at Jupiter here as in, you know, such a great thing, because most likely, you know, I think it's going to cause some financial problems, if you like it.
It can ease.
One of the reasons why let me tell you about history a little bit. So Jupiter was in the sign of Taurus, almost in the same degree where Uranus is right now. The Wall Street crash happened in 1929.
Wow.
The stock market crash that occurred started on 28th of October in that year. And then basically after we had the Great Depression going on. Then we had the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Then we had the Vatican City, who actually gained independence, which is actually a very interesting topic because Jupiter in Taurus often brings independency. So again, I believe that someone will initiate coming away from the EU, or, you know, or even from England in a sense, because obviously we had the Brexit 6-7 years ago, and Jupiter was lingering around the opposite signs anyway. So I'm expecting something. And then in 1898, we had the, 1893, we had the panic of 1893, which was again an economic depression in the United States. And it ended in 1897. So obviously the financial world is represented by Taurus. Now we do have North Node there, and we did see some significant problems around money. North Node typically is the desire to have money in the sign of Taurus, or the desire to have more fun and more pleasure. And Jupiter will magnify it now. It's kind of like a magnifying glass, if you like it. So unfortunately, I think I'm expecting some slight issues with this Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. So how did you see that, Lada, with Jupiter? Did you see the positive or the negative side of that?
Oh, I always like to, I haven't researched yet because I'm still preparing. I was focused on Saturn and Pluto, but I pay attention how Jupiter affects me when it transits my second house. It gives me more confidence about me being able to survive in the world and recognizing opportunities, but it's usually when I spend a lot more money. Rather than this.
You know, we're not necessarily talking about, you know, the personal, but at least I'm not talking about the personal, you know, matters here. I'm talking about on a world scale. And, you know, it kind of makes sense to me because at the end of the day, Jupiter, you know, it magnifies things. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Taurus keeps things. So these two are not going to come together. This is not good. Jupiter, so Taurus is more a feminine side. And it's very concerned about money and love, really, loyalty and faithfulness. Now, Jupiter is very loyal for a couple of years, but when there is something more exciting coming around, then he doesn't care anymore. So this is, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because the possible manifestation of Jupiter in the sign of Taurus is about prosperity, fertility, increase of wealth. And I think certain people will get really rich, and I think plenty will struggle. It could really talk about that we're going to learn a lot more about investments, for instance, but very important that we become a practical realist, or we see the bigger picture when it comes to finances, or we have got clear visions and goals, not like Jupiter does that. It's flaky, and then today this is my plan and tomorrow I'm going to have something else because I get enthusiastic about everything. It's about valuing tangible things and assets in your life. Yes, it could talk about enjoying food and fashion and art. And I'm really hoping that people are going to start again gardening more and sharing food and, come and taste my jam and all these type of things. Taurus is again about building. So we're going to have to learn strength. We're going to have to learn to build strength and patience, because that's the biggest learning curve of Jupiter. Jupiter has got the visualization power. So we're going to have to visualize the results. I need to know where I want to be, and how far we want to be. I think the long-term investments are going to be favorable. And I think the short-term investments are going to be, unfortunately, struggling. That's where I see problems, because Taurus is about long-term. Jupiter is short-term.
Also, like Uranus started this huge change in the financial system. I see Jupiter speeding that process and making it even easier for the central currencies, digital currencies to be. I know how they might do it through a crisis, but it's almost like that 1 year is when it comes and it gets the green light and it starts being used. And that's how I see it on a big, that it will. And I believe that when Saturn enters Taurus, they'll make normal money, maybe they'll ban it, so it will just all remain digital currency or something like that. That's how
I completely agree. I think there is a new currency coming up. And of course, we can already see that the currencies are struggling. Just a second, because I'm going to die on my laptop. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry, I'm plugged in. Yes, so, Taurus is typically the investor. So for me, some people will get very rich and most of them, I think it's just going to struggle. But on a personal level, what is limiting your ways of earning money? How do you want to boost your earnings? And you're going to have to kind of look at that. Yeah, that's how I pretty much see the Jupiter and Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. Now, what's interesting is that even though it's not going to be happening in 2023, it's only going to be happening in 2024, but Jupiter and Uranus will start their new 14-year cycle. Now, that's definitely a very interesting one. It will bring technological advancements, in my opinion, but I also believe what just Lada said, that it should bring a completely new way of paying. It's very possible that, imagine that everything is going to be cashless. So it's not going to work anymore that, oh, I've got this cash and that cash. And there is going to be an element of a controlling going on with that too. And the controlling element is going to be that imagine that there is going to be tiers where you pay and then the government straight away gets the taxes, for instance. Because we should not forget that Taurus is the opposite sign from Taurus is Scorpio. I also find Jupiter and Uranus very interesting together because Jupiter has got a 12-year cycle, Uranus has got an 84-year cycle. 84 divided by 12 is 7, which is Saturnian number. And these two are pretty much changing sign almost at the same time, just a couple of months apart. So when I look at these two, I think it's going to talk about scientific breakthroughs, most likely innovative religious practices. Most likely it would talk about somehow the limitation of international travels, or the world opens up big time, because with Uranus, it's very unpredictable to say what to expect. Most likely new planets are going to be discovered. Most likely there is going to be kind of like a movement towards freedom. People might feel very limited, and that's why, you know, they want more freedom. What's also very interesting about Uranus and Jupiter, that they always make the same conjunction every 82 to every 83 years in the very same sign. So I went back in history. 75, 76, we had the American Revolution. Then we had 88, 89, we had French Revolution. Then we had 1968, 69, we had protests by students. We had rise of the civil rights, and then we had the gay liberation going on. Then we had 1927, 28, we had the first solo travel across the Atlantic Ocean. Then we had 61, 62, space travel. Then we had 68, 69, Apollo moon. So basically with Jupiter and Uranus, when they really do something is when either they conjunct or opposing each other. So surely this is going to be bringing some peak periods in the social matter, radical people coming around. Most likely the law is going to change significantly. And in order for you to understand what's going to happen, look at what was going on with the Saturn-Uranus square. Because obviously we had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on 0 degree of Aquarius. Now Jupiter will give physical form to that Saturn and Jupiter conjunction back in 2020 December. Also, the previous cycle with Uranus and Jupiter, there was global financial issues starting in 2007. It wasn't Jupiter, and I mean it was, but what happened is 2010, we started having strikes because of the inequality of people's wealth. And they realized that 1% of the population owes 90% of the Earth assets. So the Greeks started protesting because there was a debt crisis situation going on. Then we had the Spanish protest happening in 2011. Then we had the British student protest happening in 2010-11. Then we had the Arab Spring because they wanted to bring down the Arabic regime. We had the extremism in Europe, where Marine Le Pen became president of the Front National Party in France, and then we had the neo-Nazi Golden Dawn movement, which was led by Nikolaus, whatever his name is, I can't remember. Then we had Viktor Orban becoming the prime minister in Hungary. I think, by the way, if someone is Hungarian, I think Viktor Orban will fail with the next election. So, but also technological advancements. The electric cars appeared between 97 and 2010. Internet matters. When they were opposing, we had the first spacecraft arrive to Saturn exactly 7 years after the conjunction, and Saturn is about 7 years. So definitely huge technological advancements we're going to start seeing already, starting probably in the middle of the year next year.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty much very briefly about Jupiter, Uranus in
That's a
Taurus.
lot of information. I'm trying to keep up and process. It's really well
I
researched.
know I'm trying to speak a little bit faster as well because I don't want people to sit around too long. But surely it's a little bit of a longer video. But for me, one of the biggest one is Sedna moving into the sign of Gemini. And I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. Now, if someone is curious about their Sedna, its astrological number is 90377, and then you just enter that in the additional boxes of on astro.com, and then you will see where Sedna is. Most of us will have it in the sign of Taurus because it's been in the sign of Taurus since 1960s. However, Sedna becomes very prominent in your chart if it connects to one of your personal planets or angles. Sorry, Lada, you wanted to say something?
Since the 1980s, maybe? Because you said it takes 40 years.
No, it depends on the sign.
Oh, okay. So sometimes it's
it has got a very irregular orbit.
Oh, okay.
It's very similar to Pluto. Pluto spends the longest time in the sign of Taurus and the shortest in the sign of Scorpio. In Taurus, it spends about 30 years, and in the sign of Scorpio, only about 11, 12. Yeah. So Sedna is very similar in that sense. Sedna actually spends about 1,000 years in the sign of Sagittarius. And only 40 in Gemini. And actually, that's good that we talk about it, because imagine how much Sedna was trying to teach us in the sign of Gemini, and then it's consolidating now in Sagittarius, and it's consolidating now whether we learn that 1,000-year lesson, because it's in the opposing sign, and oppositions and conjunctions are the biggest. So
something
that's
about
why
religions again, for sure.
Religion, yes, it's about your knowledge. Just very briefly, I'm not going to talk about what Sedna, myth and all those type of things, but it wants us to realize the realization of the facts, that we cannot rely on just what we see anymore. We need to do research. It talks about some astrologers associate Sedna with finances because it's been in the sign of Taurus for so long, but I don't think it's true. But it could talk about the financial trend is going to change and it's going to become online. So most likely the money notes are going to start disappearing. Mm-hmm. It's going to talk about the computerized knowledge. And we're going to realize that the computers are so indispensable. Mm-hmm. We probably know that now as well. But if we still have got people who believe that, computers are not good, it's not going to work. And that's why I might be afraid of the 1964-67 generation, where I said Saturn is opposing their Uranus-Pluto conjunction, and which was a stellium, that they're going to have to go through a training, for instance, that you have to learn immediately, a new language. You're going to have to learn to program a computer or all those type of things. This Sedna surely should bring faster travels by air, especially. Most likely 5G or 6G is going to come around, and it's going to spread like there is no tomorrow. Most likely brain research will be very prominent. But at the same time, because Sedna was really about depression and being betrayed by her own father, and she was forced to marry someone who was an evil spirit, and her own father killed her so the father could save his own life. And that's when she found her spiritual kind of meaning to life. So Sedna is really about awakening to your spiritual core. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily on a personal level. It's more about the collective energies. So unfortunately, it could talk about mental challenges, which will grow, especially when Jupiter conjuncts Sedna 2024. And mental health is going to become quite significant. And that correlates with Saturn in Pisces anyway. Mm-hmm. I think, again, the social media element, that the media to control our lives even more than now. Sedna will somehow try to rise against that. But it's going to be about spreading anyway at the beginning. But by 2050, 70, sorry, there is going to be a I think the social media will disappear, but we're not going to be here anyway. I mean, I don't know if I will be, but anyway. I'm going to talk about the 2017 in a second. Most likely, there is going to be a huge concern about marine animals, so fishes.
About marine?
Because marines. Marines and animals, fish animals. Because Sedna actually became a fish herself. And that's how she became the goddess of ocean. Saturn is moving into the sign of Pisces, which talks about the ocean too. So the ocean pollution, saving the fishes, most likely there's going to be a shortage of fishes. And the prices of fishes will go up significantly. So we started seeing the food prices going up. Now it's going to carry forward, unfortunately. But hopefully the marine animals are going to become more of a concern. Also very interesting that Sedna was on Algol when COVID started. I just put it out there if someone is interested. And I'm not going to talk about that more. But what's also very prominent to mention that the entire 2023, 2024, Sedna and Pluto will communicate constantly. They're going to have a trine. So they're going to have actually 6 trines going on. They started in the sign of Taurus on 29 degree. And Taurus is the 29 degrees, the weeping sisters. It brings plenty of sorrow. It kind of really talks about the fate, the shift of the fate. And Pluto, who wants to demolish things and it wants to rebuild things in the sign of Capricorn. So it really talks about that, you know what, we need to break down the governmental structure. So what I'm expecting with Sedna moving into the sign of Gemini, that the voting system will change. Somehow it will change. We're going to, vote in a different way. By the way, Sedna and Pluto started its trine in 2022 February. So we can already see some signs, what we should expect from it. I think it wants us to, and what we see in 2022 February, supermarkets started closing down. Gemini rules supermarkets. Big food chains started leaving certain countries. So most likely it's going to carry on. The cost of living started rising significantly. It's going to carry on, unfortunately. We started having a little bit of a housing crisis situation also because the prices, especially obviously because of the electricity and all those type of things, the gas, most likely this is going to carry on. It could really talk about, by the way, that kind of like a crisis situation in the society. It could talk about that humans are going to get cloned. There's going to be genetic manipulation going on. And maybe this is the way how they want to fix the food industry as well. Let's clone fishes and all those type of things, for instance.
Well, they already
because we have a food shortage.
Yeah.
Say again?
They're already growing artificial meat in lab and from real cells.
Yeah.
So why would Sedna do that? Or is it the sign Gemini, or what is it exactly?
Both of them, because Sedna is a fish. After she died, her father killed her. She became the goddess of the sea. And she is more about the bottom of the ocean, and Neptune is more about the mid and the top part of the ocean. So she rules over any type of invisible fishes, which we have never discovered really. So therefore, Saturn going into the sign of Pisces surely will discover lost towns or species which we have never known about, and so forth. I also believe that it could talk about, for instance, that there is going to be new people and new ideology coming towards us, and we're going to learn about those new ideologies. So I do believe that somehow astrology is going to get attacked, and we astrologers will need to adapt. Most likely because there is going to be plenty of other discoveries made in the cosmos, and the old system is not going to work for us anymore. We're going to have to adopt those new knowledges and alter our kind of consciousness, if you like it. Because the researchers say whenever we discover a new planetary energy, such as we did with Sedna in 2003, the reason why we discovered them is because that's when the humanity is ready to start the shift.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's why I like looking at these modern stuff also, not just the traditional one, because I think I need to improve. I cannot get stuck in the past, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. And I think those people who are really trying hard to hold on to the past, Sedna is shifting between Taurus and Gemini. Gemini is about flexibility. Taurus is about holding on to something. Those will struggle significantly. We need to have an open mind. And we're going to have to learn new skills. Otherwise, we're going to sink right at the bottom of the ocean. I also believe that Sedna, moving into the sign of Gemini, should bring appreciation more of the neighborhoods. So maybe people are not going to be traveling as far anymore, for instance, And one other thing, which I really want to mention here, Gemini rules genders. And therefore, this could really talk about that this genderism is going to get a lot bigger. And with Pluto, most likely there's going to be demonstrations about it. Even it's a trine, but still 29 degrees is not necessarily great. And I can also imagine that as astral travel is going to be more prominent, or the birth of an alternative world. Maybe they're going to discover some type of, not necessarily in 2023, but maybe it's just 2070, but they're going to discover some new lives, or virtual reality. I mean, that is coming. We're going to have meetings in the cloud and all those type of things, that's just right in front of us. And I can imagine that how the work is going to happen is that you are sitting at home in the cloud type of thing, and then someone is just monitoring you, whether you do the job or not. It's not going to happen immediately. I think potentially 2027, 2026, when I think metaverse will kick off. One of the reasons is because I looked at also the Jupiter and Pluto cycles, and we're going to have a trine going on. And I looked at the previous trine period, and it was always so major technological advancements that our socks got blown off. Wow. So I think metaverse will kick off 26, 20, especially 27, 28.
I'm already addicted to my phone and social media. Then I'm totally incapacitated, probably, just staying at home.
I know what you mean, but unfortunately it's there. And let's not forget that at the end of the day, we have got Pluto moving into the sign of Aquarius too, which is going to destroy internet to start with, and it's going to build a new one instead. So, that could really talk about how the society will change because it's transforming. Surely, Pluto in the sign of Aquarius will want to give the power back to people. And that's also one of the reasons why I thought that democracy is going to come up as a topic, or people, it's very interesting because, you know, a democracy means basically nothing for plenty because they have got kind of democracy going on. But half of the world, there is no democracy, there is no equality going on. So when I look at this gender question, for instance, where you can still get arrested because you smiled at the same gender, or, you know, all those type of things. So Pluto will want to change that, this mentality. And because what's Aquarius? It's about social justice. And I think when the dispositor of Pluto, which will be Saturn, ingressing into the sign of Aries, which is a very volatile sign, that's when we're going to have demonstrations and the sexuality going to become a major topic. And there is going to be plenty who will hate it, and there is going to be plenty who will stand up for it. So therefore, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction for me is kind of like that the society is getting divided, basically, in regards to these stuff. I mean, we talk about the Saturn and Neptune in about 3 years' time, most likely in a lot more, but this is one of the topic which I think fits the picture, with Pluto going into Aquarius, Sedna moving into sign of Gemini. Both of them are about knowledge anyway. So it's about the higher knowledge. But in order for us to understand the higher knowledge, we're going to have to have enough data, and we need to analyze that data. So those two are collaborating, and Pluto and Sedna will be trining each other for 2 years. So that's pretty much in a, you know, briefly how I see Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, I can talk about it a lot more as well. But I think the biggest one is, and unfortunately, Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, in my experience, always brings love and hate relationships. So either you run with it or you stay with it, you know. And I think, by the way, I think it should talk about the education system, how it will be changing also. You know, I can also imagine that, I don't know, half of the day, I mean, half of the week you're going to be at school, or maybe once a week you go to school and then 4 days you are at home. These type of things. Because think about it, somehow they're going to have to stop the electricity issues, the gas issues. Schools are going to start closing down. I mean, in Hungary, for instance, they set it for 18 degrees and it cannot be higher. Wow. So the kids are wearing jackets. That's how they sit at the bench. And it's coming everywhere. I mean, they do the same stuff because somehow they want to save. So that Jupiter in the sign of Taurus will want to save more and more money rather than just spending and spending. I mean, I'm talking about global level and not individuals. So that's pretty much how I see this Pluto going into the 11th house. And Pluto's highest manifestation is about healing. So it's about group therapies, really. So again, it really talks about, for me, how much people will have to shift their mindsets, or how important it becomes that you remain sane. So you look after your sanity. But anyway, in a positive way, this is really about technological advancements. It would talk about things which, you know, never existed, and it's going to get discovered, because Pluto is the planet of, in a way, discovery, because we dig deep and then we find something at the bottom. You know, it could talk about new resources coming around. But I think the major one is that the internet is going to get restructured.
What do you think?
What we see as internet now, it's not going to be same.
It's going to be like 3D, where you fully go inside, and it's like you go on a website to order your food, and it's like you're in the middle of the store. And wow.
Yeah. And, you know, I can really imagine by the time Pluto finishes in the sign of Aquarius, it's going to be a 20-year period, by the way. Somehow there is not going to be government, or at least no monarchy. So people will get the power back, but this is going to be a heavy ride at the beginning, you know.
Absolutely. And there'll be a lot of revolutions. That's Pluto in Aquarius.
Absolutely.
A lot of protests. But people, do you think that a lot of people talking about globalization, that they want the whole world to be controlled centrally? Do you think it's possible during Pluto in Aquarius? No,
I mean, I think there is going to be attempts for that. And I'm really hoping that people will unite and say, no, I'm not having it. I'm really hoping, because Pluto is really about that 1% of the population who are extremely rich. How is it fair that, 1% owes the 90% of the earth, and then the rest of them are, have nothing to eat? Pluto, which talks about taxation, that could change significantly in the upcoming years. Hopefully it's tax relief rather than, it's going too far. But as I said, I think what's going to happen is that there is going to be kind of like a till, and you pay tax immediately. So there's not going to be this yearly tax rebate and all these type of things. It's just going to disappear. You get it automatically, or you pay automatically. Something like that, I really kind of imagine.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing so many well-researched and insightful ideas about those three major shifts, four actually, with Jupiter as well. That was very insightful. I think people should keep coming back to this video for years, for years and years.
Yeah, and as I said, I really rushed through because it's impossible to cover these, and we haven't even talked about the nodes and Humea, and there are such big changes. Yeah, but unfortunately, I think almost a 2-hour video might be enough for a first round for people.
It was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, Viktor. Viktor he has incredible work as a teacher, his own research, which is very rare, because it takes thousands of charts and hours to discover new correlations. And that's what Viktor does. So he's considered one of the best astrology teachers in the world. So all his courses will be available at a very nice discount. Check the links below. It will take you to his courses, or for a personal reading if you are ready for one with Viktor. Thank you so much again. Happy New Year, a big one. Like you said, preparation for 2026, but it's like, woohoo, it's gonna be huge. 2 hours was not enough for us to cover it. An hour and a half.
Just one last note. I think it's a very difficult decade, and from 2030, it's gonna become a lot easier. So we have got a good 7 years to maybe struggle, and then after it becomes hell lot easier.
Thank you so much. We need to hear that. So we're living in the most interesting times. Just survive till 2030 with your authentic self and freedoms, and we'll be much better after. Thank you so much. Have a great New Year ahead.
Everyone.
Thank you for the knowledge.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.